Hey everybody, it's GolemletX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we'll be playing another premiere draft of Wilds of Eldraine Alchemy. This is Wilds of Eldraine with one alchemy card added to each pack. Why am I playing it? Because the queues are still here. I don't know why they're still here. The post that I saw about the alchemy drafts going live said that they were going to end on the 17th, when they would get swapped over to Shadows of Innistrad Remastered, but I suppose they are still here indefinitely, question mark. We don't know when they will end, but for now we get to play Wilds of Eldraine with a little extra spice added, and that extra spice is going to lead to our pack one pick one, which is Ceres, Slayer of Fear. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a very powerful card. A 5-mana 5/5 first strike lifelinker is already going to win combat all the time, making it like impossible for your opponent to race. And they're going to potentially be a card draw engine as well, seeking cards with the highest mana value from your library with mana value less than or equal to the life gained. So you hit your opponent for 5, and then you randomly get a card with mana value 5 or less from your library, whatever the highest mana value card you could find is. So really nice card draw engine, and definitely the pack one pick one here. For pack 1, pick 2, the alchemy card has vanished out of this pack. There's also nothing great in white to go with our Slayer of Fear. There is honestly not that much in this pack. The strongest card is Greta, but we would have to play 3 colors to get Greta into the same deck as the Ceres. Sir Armont is definitely not as strong as Greta, but still a perfectly reasonable card and potentially pretty good with our Slayer of Fear, so let's scoop up Sir Armont here. And for pack 1, pick 3, we see some pretty great black commons like Minstrosity, Voracious Vermin, and Sweet Tooth Witch. The alchemy card here is the Loch Laurent, which is not that strong even if you're in blue. And let's see, some decent uncommons like the Red Tooth Vanguard and Belligerent to the ball. I think Belligerent is stronger than Vanguard. It's probably stronger than all these commons as well. So the main question here is it late enough with 2 picks that we really want to heavily take something that's on color, or do we just still take the strongest card in the pack and take the Belligerent? And I think I still just take Belligerent here. The difference between taking like a mono-colored off-colored card, like a Sir Armont to our pick 1, pack 1 rare, and a 2-colored off-colored card, like a green-black card against our mono-white rare, is pretty big, because it's 2 colors off instead of just 1 color off. If we take a 1 color off card, we can fit our rare in here and a Belligerent, or we can fit our rare and an Armont. So that's the reason why I'm willing to like take a Belligerent there over Red Tooth Vanguard, but I wasn't willing to take a Greta over a Sir Armont. So for pack 1, pick 4, again, not the strongest pack in the world. There's a Shrouded Shepherd, there's a Gallant Pie Wielder. These are some of the better cards in the pack, probably the best cards in the pack. Honestly, most of these commons are just not great, and they're on color, so I'm going to go for the Shrouded Shepherd here. I do really like that Cleave Shadows flexibility off of some splashing with some treasures or some crystal grottos or something like that. And it's looking decent now to get another Shrouded Shepherd. We could also head deeper into red with a Monstrous Rage for just red-white aggro stuff with our Belligerent to the ball, or head deeper into green with a Hamlet Glutton at the top of the curve, which is a great card to have at the top. It also works well with our Slayer of Fear, but you don't really need to draft anything else to make the Slayer of Fear a really powerful card. Hamlet Glutton's just kind of like great on its own, and Ceres is just great on her own. So I kind of want to take Glutton just because I really love Hamlet Glutton. In the green decks, it's like the biggest reason to be in green for me. Shepherd is actually probably the safest pick though. I'm actually going to scoop up the Shepherd there, because if we take the Shepherd, it's going to end up in our red-white aggro deck or our green-white more mid-rangey pile. And it does leave us open to black as a secondary color or blue as a secondary color. It doesn't even necessarily have to go with our current picks. And this pack makes it look like maybe it won't, because the red and green card in here are pretty bad. There's literally no white card, so we either take a Tome Seeker, which is a great card for like a blue-white controlling deck, because we can bargain away one of our random tokens or enchantments or something to pick up an instant or sorcery from grave, or just take a good black aggro card like Sweet Tooth Witch or Conceited Witch, and I think I'm going to take the black card with the Sweet Tooth Witch there. For pack 1, pick 7, there's a Prophetic Prism for splashing in off-color adventures, but Prism is a lot better at splashing in slower decks than in aggressive decks, because you are spending 2 mana to not affect the board state at all, you're just setting up mana at that time. So it's not like we'd play it in white-red, but we could play it in white-green or white-black. Alternatively, there's Light Blades, which is only controlling removal. I'm definitely not playing Barrow Naughty, or there's Red Cap Thief towards red. I'm just going to scoop up the Red Cap Thief. I like these kind of single-handed bargain enablers, or celebration enablers. Bargain enablers I like as well, and this does do both. But the kind of cards that you play it, and off of the one spell you've played 2 permanents. It's always pretty nice. Pick 8 has pretty much nothing. We'll just take a Scarecrow Guide. This is a good aggressive mana fixer, because you can just put it in as a 2 mana 2/1 on curve. It's not very good, but it makes it so when you randomly have your off-color adventure, you get to cast it without durdling with your mana at all, with cards like Prophetic Prism. Pick 9, there's some good blue-red spells cards like Unruly Catapult and Johan, but we're pretty far away from those archetypes, so we could take a random black aggro dork, or a Prophetic Prism if we go a little slower. We do already have 2 great 2 mana cards, so maybe it's best to just take the Prism here. Because Wicked Visitor is pretty replacement level, but if we end up in a grindier deck that wants fixing like Prism, that card is not very replaceable. Now we can take Moment of Valor, which is like sort of a combat trick and sort of a removal spell, depends on the opportunity. It's not great at doing either, but it's fine at both. That's a pick 11 Vermin, but this pack had a lot of good black cards in it. Pick 11 Ruby as well. But not every single 2 color pair is always going to get drafted, because there are 10 of them and only 8 drafters. Alright, pick up some random nonsense to wrap up pack 1, and pack 2 is going to lock us into white here. I was going to say, you know, honestly, at this point, we might not be locked into white, because our best white cards were all taken within the first 4 or 5 picks. So that doesn't necessarily mean that white is open at all. We just rare drafted a white spell, and then took 2 solid white uncommons pretty early. That's really the only reason that we're on white right now. But now we've just opened up a white mythic rare that's one of the strongest cards in the format, so we're definitely sticking to the color, even if it means that we're going to end up playing some more mediocre creatures like Protective Parents, or mediocre spells like Moment of Valor. It'll be worth it for those times that we do draw into a Virtue of Loyalty, or we do draw into a Slayer of Fear. So we'll take the Virtue. The Alchemy card pack is Steady Tortoise, which is a super fun one, but pretty far away from where we are at. And I'm going to take a very early Cooped Up here, because we know that we're in white, so this is going to be a removal spell that ends up in our deck no matter what. It's going to be phenomenal. Agatha's Champion is a great, great, great card, but again, we're 100% on white, only like maybe 30 to 50% on green. If I take a champion, I'll bump that up. I'll be like, all right, I'm like 50% chance of playing green now, but right now, without taking it, we're at like a 30%. Again, Cooped Up just is going to make the deck no matter what. There's no opportunity cost of taking Cooped Up. It will end up in our final pile, and so will a second copy. And I think this is better in a vacuum than Princess Takes Flight. If I had taken a stockpiling Celebrant or 2, then Princess Takes Flight would be better. But halfway through the draft with no stockpiling Celebrants in the deck yet, and also no bargain spells, I'm just going to take the Cooped Up, because you need to be able to bargain away the Princess Takes Flight or return it back to your hand to get like your full value off of this. So we'll just take another Cooped Up. Pack 2, pick 4. Well, there is a Candy Grapple for bargain. There's also an Ash Party Crasher, pick 4 for red-white celebration aggro. These are two great places to be. Red-white or black-white. So the plus side of trying to move towards black-white is that our Shrouded Shepherds are going to be able to cleave shadows. And our black spells aren't bad, but our red spells aren't bad either. The plus side of going red here is that it gets to be more aggressive and probably make a little bit better use of like Virtue of Loyalty just by being aggro. I'd take the Ash over the Candy Grapple. I think I want to move towards red-white aggro rather than black-white mid-rangey stuff. Black-white could also just still be pretty aggressive, but I do like red a lot in this format, and I love red-white in the format. This looks pretty nice for a curve towards Boros aggro, red-white aggro. Now we have Glass Casket to temporarily get rid of a small creature. We have the huge combat trick of Monstrous Rage, or we have the very solid 2-drop of Grand Ballgast. Even though Grand Ballgast is going to be a decent bit better than Scarecrow Guide, and a little better than like a Shrouded Shepherd at 2 mana, Monstrous Rage is doing something that, again, is not very replaceable. It's just such a powerful combat trick, giving a permanent trample buff to our creature if it survives that combat. Just really popping off. Now we've got another red cap thief. I actually like that a little better than Grabby Giant in this deck because we can play turn 2 Ash into turn 3 red cap thief to trigger Celebration and get the +1/+1 counter. And we can also use the treasure tokens to cast a Cleave Shadows if we draw a Shrouded Shepherd in the right matchup where that is going to be powerful. And with double red cap thief to trigger the Celebration, I think a Grand Ballgast as a 2-drop here looks great. But Picnic Ruiner could be another option for us because we are going to potentially have some treasure tokens or a Scarecrow Guide lying around to maybe try to cast Stolen Goodies. But I think I'd rather just play the more aggressive, like guaranteed like 3 power attacker. And now there's an Edgewall pack for another card to single-handedly trigger Celebration, which is great. Merry Bards works very similarly, where it will trigger Celebration by itself when you pay it for 4, or when you cast it for 4, paying for the Young Hero roll. But Edgewall pack gives you the wider board state, giving you 2 creatures off 1 card, plus it's got a Menace Attacker as one of those creatures, so it can really find some extra damage for you. And for pick 9, suppose we will take a Grabby Giant now. As much as I do like a Merry Bards, I think I can admit that Grabby Giant is a little bit better for its added flexibility, getting you a treasure early when you have nothing else to do with your mana, and letting you sacrifice lands to draw cards late game if you're flooding out. Which is pretty nice. So we don't have any Young Hero rolls yet for the Gingerbrute, but this is the color pair that's the best at making those, and those rolls make Gingerbrute an incredible card, just stacking up into a 4/4 attacker, just a 4/4 unblockable eventually. Pretty sweet. Take an Armory Mice here, but the Battle Garb is another card I'm okay with running 1 copy of in these Celebration aggro piles. And we've got a full deck here. I've got 2 cards in my sideboard, so we've got 24 non-land cards if we need them. We've opened up an Alchemy Mythic. 6 mana 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, you may put any number of auras from your graveyard or hand onto the battlefield attached to it. Okay, so it's a 6 mana 6/6, and that's it. The idea is you're supposed to have blue mana so you can conjure up all these extra auras into your hand, but double blue is going to be a hard sell even with our treasure tokens sitting around. So I think we would rather take like an Archon's Glory maybe. I mean, Expel the Interlopers is definitely not the kind of card an aggressive deck wants, but it might still be powerful enough to run in this deck. The nice thing about this that might still make it worth running in Boros aggro is that if we're playing against like a green-black deck and they eventually stabilize with a giant creature, we can just say like, okay, let's blow up everything with 5 or more power, and that'll probably just not kill any of our creatures. So this could be good. Could be good for us, even though generally aggro decks don't want board wipes. And pack 3, pick 2, we will easily take a second copy of Ash Party Crasher, and now we'll take a Godric Cloaked Reveler. When we're triggering Celebration with this, it's turning into a 4/4 flyer with fire breathing. so it can really get damage in. Fantastic rare. And this deck is looking sweet. We have the Slayer of Fear, we have the Godric, we've got a Virtue of Loyalty. Our removal leaves a little bit to be desired. We have 2 Cooped Up that are great removal spells, then an Expel that might be a little narrow, and a Moment that's definitely a little narrow. But our general card quality is insane here. It's pretty high up. Pack 3, pick 4. This is a 5-mana Saga to deal 4 to each creature and Planeswalker. And damage isn't removed from creatures during cleanup steps, then it's going to do some more damage. Okay, so it's a board wipe. This one is a board wipe we can't control. I don't want to play that with this many 2-drop aggro creatures and stuff. If we got an Expel and a Victory early, we could have tried to be some kind of red-white more controlling deck, which would have been pretty cute, but I think we just take a Grabby Giant or a Stockpiling Celebrant here, and I don't think we actually have good synergies for the Celebrant, unfortunately. So I'm just going to take another Grabby Giant. And here we can take the Scalding Viper. We have some random treasure and 1 Scarecrow Guide to maybe hit the Steam Clean Adventure. And even when we don't hit it, it's just a 2-mana 2/1 on curve that pings our opponent for a couple extra points of damage. Kind of a Viashino Pyromancer. That's a kind of a classic on Arena. 2-mana 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to your opponent. Was a nice card for like mono red aggro decks for a while. I think I'll take my first Pie Wielder over my 3rd Grabby Giant. Neither of these are going to be incredible at this point. Pack 3, pick 7. Well, we found the Hopeful Vigil to work with the Stockpiling Celebrant, but we didn't take the Celebrant, but we're still going to take the Hopeful Vigil. As great as Embereth Veteran is a 1-drop creature that turns into Young Hero Roll later, we have enough Celebration cards that the Hopeful Vigil is looking incredibly exciting. This will trigger our 2 copies of Ash, our Belligerent to the Ball, our Godric, plenty of really, really powerful abilities that we really want to trigger. Now I can take Flick a Coin, but interestingly, I could also take Return Triumphant here, because it will immediately trigger Celebration, and it works really well with Gingerroot, so there's some reasons to maybe want Triumphant over Flick a Coin. I think we're low enough on good non-creature spells, though, to still take a Flick a Coin over what's basically a creature. It's just going to reanimate a creature. So I'll take a Grabby Giant over Light Blades again, because I don't really like removal spells where creatures have to get in combat in aggressive decks, because then those don't really work very well against blockers, because you're ideally wanting to coop something up pre-combat and then attack in and get your damage in, instead of attacking into something and then Light Blades and get after it blocks, because then it still stops your damage for the turn. So we still get a pick 11 Return Triumphant, and I'm definitely going to play that in this deck. So we are happy to get a copy of that. I'm not going to play 2 Moment of Valor. I don't even know if I'm playing the first, so I'll take a Besotted Knight here. Not that I'm going to play that either, but we'll see. All right, get rid of that Skewer Slinger. And let's do some adjustments to this deck. I think we have so many good 2-drops that I might have to cut the Scarecrow Guide Dream package and just run a bunch of powerful, efficient 2-mana creatures. Because Shrouded Shepherd, if you're an aggressive deck, even without Cleave Shadows, this is just damage. It's, again, much like a Viashino Pyromancer, a 2-mana 2/2 that hits your opponent for 2 when it enters battlefield, because you make one of your 1/1s a 3/3, so you hit them for 2 points of extra damage for the turn. So even without Cleave Shadows, I think Shrouded Shepherd's still good. And we are going to randomly have 3 treasure tokens. I'm not going to cut any Red Cap Thieves or the Flick a Coin here, so we will still, very rarely, but occasionally, we will be able to play the adventure. Again, not often, but we don't need to. The card's already good without the adventure. So I think that's fine. Don't think the Keep Guard looks very good in here. We're very, very, very low on enchantments. There's a few rolls, but not a lot. The Spear Guard and Gingerroot just seem better, just hasting things in, and both of these Great targets for a young hero role, but especially the Ginger Brute. Looking at our 3-drop slot, Protective Parents is one of the least consistent ways to get a young hero role, because it's a little harder to control when that's dying. So let's drop that out immediately. Besotted Knight's pretty slow. Double Clothier are also pretty slow. 5 mana ways to trigger Celebration. And that still leaves us with 46 cards, 19 creatures, 10 non-creatures. Like to be a very creature-heavy deck, but on the plus side, we do have a Virtue of Loyalty and a Hopeful Vigil. So that's 2 more creatures than it looks like. And especially with Virtue of Loyalty, this is adding to our creature count and our non-creature count really well, to where it's a 2-drop creature and a 5-drop just like win condition. So I really like the Virtue of Loyalty. But yeah, that does make us feel like we have like 21 creatures in here, which is quite a few. That means we do have room to cut some more out of the deck. We do have a lot clumping up at 2 and 3 mana, because Hopeful Vigil and Virtue of Loyalty are also 2 mana creatures. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 2 mana creatures. Maybe drop the Armory Mice here. Its Celebration Trigger is like one of the weakest of all of them. Its Celebration Trigger essentially lets it attack into 1/1s and 2/2s. But the big flaw of having 1 toughness in this format is a lot more than just not being able to attack into 1/1s. It's dying to flick a coin, dying to rat out, dying to these really cheap, efficient ways to kill something and get like a token out of it. So the Celebration Trigger really doesn't save it from that downside, which does make it look like the weakest of our 2-drops, but for the same reason Scalding Viper might be our second weakest. This is getting some extra damage done to our opponent, even if they immediately kill it with Flick a Coin or Rat Out or something, though it will ping them once. So Viper does still seem better than the Armory Mice, but not by a lot. That's maybe a cut as well. I think I'd rather start cutting maybe some 3s and 4s before that, though. Piewielder is a pretty fun Celebration Trigger, but we've got like 1 card to pop off with it, right? If we have Belligerent and Piewielder on board to make it a menacing double striker, that's crazy. But other than that, we're not really popping off with it. Maybe in Magical Christmas Land, we play a Shepherd and another 2-drop, trigger it there. But again, like it just forces a chump kind of when it gets the Celebration. I think it's one of our weaker Celebration triggers. And we have so many very, very strong Celebration triggers like Ash, Godric, and Belligerent that I think if I'm cutting 3-drops, like Belligerent and Godric are stronger Celebration cards, and then Redcap Thieves, I just need them because I need Celebration enablers, whereas Piewielder is just like another Celebration payoff, which I already have a good chunk of. So maybe Piewielder, maybe a Giant or 2. I don't think I need a million of those. And we can keep the curve kind of low this way. Maybe a land by cutting a 4-drop and a 3-drop here. So you're like 2 giants, a land. Just do that immediately, and then I only need to cut 2 more cards. Not in love with the Moment of Valor. I think that's our least flexible removal spell. I was gonna say our least flexible non-creature spell, but Return Triumphant is probably our least flexible non-creature spell, but we have enough creatures for it. And some really high-value ones to reanimate, and some that just become high-value when we reanimate them, like a Ginger Brute. So I still like the Return. So if we do, like, cut that and a Piewielder, what is that creature and a non-creature looking like? It's basically 17 creatures. We got 15, a Vigil, and a Virtue. Seems pretty much perfect. This deck's aggressive enough we could play more than 17, but 17's kind of the golden number there generally. Looks pretty great to me. Yeah, I've only got 16 lands with a couple really powerful 5-drops, or I guess a few. But we do have 3 random treasure tokens we could use on that because, again, There's nothing in the deck that needs to use the treasure for off-color mana. I can just curve out with Vipers and Shepherds and their fine cards off of the main colors. So we can just use the treasures to play a 5-drop with 4 lands if we have them. So yeah, I'm liking that. I think we are gonna call it a deck here. Alright, so here's a look at the final deck list for today, and we're on a Boros Celebration aggro deck. So a lot of the great stuff you always want to have in this kind of deck. We've got the nice aggressive curve. We've got 2 of the Signpost uncommon Ash Party Crashers showing off that we want to get hasting in for damage, and we want to have 2 non-land permanents enter the battlefield to get the maximum benefit from a lot of our cards. Ash is going to get bigger whenever she attacks with Celebration. Belligerent to the Ball is going to give something Menace with Celebration triggers. And one of our bombs, our Godric, is going to get flying when 2 non-land permanents hit the board and attack as a 4/4 instead of a 3/3 with Fire Breathing as well. So Godric gets insane with Celebration triggers. We've got all of our other stuff on our good aggressive curve. Nice cheap hasters, some Shepherds that get extra damage in. Scalding Viper pings our opponent for extra damage. A lot of really aggressive stuff like that, and this is a super, super bomb-heavy Boros build, because we have the Godric we already spoke about. We also have Cerise, Slayer of Fear, for a big first strike lifelinker that draws us a card at the beginning of our post-combat main phase, whenever they have gained us some life. We've got an Expel the Interlopers that can sometimes be a little bit of a one-sided board wipe. We're not going to wipe our opponent's entire board, but if we have a bunch of 3 power and less creatures, and they're trying to stabilize with 4/4s and 5/5s, maybe we'll kill 1 or 2 of their creatures without killing any of our own. And then probably the biggest bomb in the deck, the Virtue of Loyalty here, gives us another 2 mana 2/2 on curve, as well as a massive, massive win condition, buffing our entire board with a permanent +1/+1 counter at the beginning of every one of our end steps. So very balmy deck here. Great aggressive curve. We've got some solid removal with 2 cooped up and a flick a coin. We've got a little bit of everything you want in the archetype, and hopefully we just draw the right stuff at the right time, but does look like an excellent, excellent deck today, so I'm very excited to see how it does as we head into the gameplay. Here we are on the play for game 1 with unfortunately what is not a super keepable hand. We need to draw exactly a Plains to be happy here, and we're not on the draw. Yeah, we can't afford to keep this 1-lander. It's so powerful, though, if we hit it with an Ash and a Virtual Loyalty, a Shrouded Shepherd, all castable, but I think that's got to be a mulligan, and this is a much safer keep. Can even ditch a land here, honestly. The Grabby Giant even has an adventure that we can cast off of just 1, or just the 2 mana, instead of needing all 4. So this way we get to go Gingerbrute into Ash, into Vigil, and then if I'm still not drawing my lands, I can just get a treasure token, setting up to cast the Giant off of its own treasure later. Do I trade Gingerbrute for the Snare Master? It's honestly probably fine. We don't have a ton of young hero rolls in this deck, and the one that I can think of that we have is by returning it from grave to battlefield anyway. That's how we get a hero roll onto it. So, Hopeful Vigil will trigger Ash, or I can get a treasure token and sack the treasure for the Ball Guest. I think I would rather just play the Vigil. That way it is possible that I could like cast the Giant off of its own treasure token later or something. Does seem like they probably have like a Candy Grapple here though, yep. So Ash is not long for the world either way. Alright, past the turn, we hit a Redcap Thief, which is interesting. So let's send in for 2. Paths of Twin Veil, bounce the token. Okay, so that's basically just another Candy Grapple. 1-for-1 removal spell. Let's... It's awkward to play the Celebration Enabler right now when I have a Grand Ball Guest in hand, but it gives me the treasure to play like the Grabby Giant next turn, while still putting a creature on the board right now. Right, because now whether or not I draw land, I can cast Grabby Giant next turn and get a 4/3 down. And I would like to do that while they're tapped out. So since they're tapped out here, I think I'm just playing my 4-3 on this board state. Let's attack with the red cap thief first to threaten a combat trick on the prankster. Opponent does not care, which is fair. Even if I had a combat trick, trading a combat trick into their 1-3 would probably be fine for our opponent. You'll get it out of my hand. There's a Sleep Cursed Fairy for our opponent. They're still on 2 mana, which in some ways is a good thing, that they're not going to slam down a ton of spells, but in some ways, kind of a bad thing. It means that they have nothing but spells in hand. So they could certainly catch up over time. Now... Ballgast is going to be a fine attacker when I trigger Celebration. But if I play Ballgast here, I can't sack Hopeful Vigil or a land to Grabby Giant. Probably still worth it. Setting up for damage here. Try to kill them before this fairy untaps and before they get any more mana. Just get our max damage on board. Put a stop in my upkeep, but I think I'm just going to draw naturally. Because if I spend 3 mana to sack Hopeful Vigil before I draw a card, then I won't be able to cast anything I draw. If I draw a land, that is a bit of a bummer. But then we can just spend the mana after drawing the land to draw another card off Grabby Giant. But I do want to put the stop there just so I have that option. We do hit a Celebration Enabler, which is great for the Ballgast. So I'm pretty sure we're attacking with the whole board, right? Because if I attack all, their best block is to kill Spearguard with Prankster without losing a creature, and then have Mocking Sprite. No, that ain't even that good. Alright, never mind. Yeah, we're definitely attacking all. I don't think there's any, like, free kill that they just take here. So a 2-for-1 block onto the Grabby Giant it's gonna be, so we just kill the Prankster. Kill their highest toughness card, so our other creatures are all able to kill a 2-1. Or because all our other creatures are able to just kill a 2-1. They're already down to 7 now. Again, they have 4 spells in hand, and now they have 4 mana for them. So they could still recover with the right spells here, because they've certainly got a lot they can cast. I forgot to put the stop in my upkeep. That would have been a turn where it might have been questionably worth it. So their play here is probably to untap the fairy, block and kill our 2-3, have the sprite trade into a 2-1, but they go down to 2 life if they do that. They go down to 2 life and we kill the Mocking Sprite, so this will be fine. Because they'll be at 2 life facing 2 1/1s and a Menace 3-3 with a single creature left on board. And then they only have 4 mana, so they have to spend most of their mana playing another creature to block with, which doesn't give them enough mana to interact with the creatures. So that is going to be enough from the aggro, and we are going to start things off 1-0 heading into game 2. Here we are for game 2 with a beautiful hand on the draw. We have a turn 2 Ash, turn 3 Hopeful Vigil. We can return Triumphant the Ash if she dies. Got a Shrouded Shepherd to buff stuff up and get extra damage in. The opponent's starting with Tattered Ratter. Do I still just send in an Ash? No, I think I play an Ash and then we play a Vigil and send in when Ash is a 3-3. But they are on the play with a Rakdos deck. They'll have 3 mana up, so the odds of them not having another creature here are pretty low. But it is a 2-3, so we can trade Ash into a 2-3. Could also Shrouded Shepherd to make Ash a 4-4 attacker. That's still not big enough unless I celebrate in the same turn. And I can celebrate. I can go make a treasure, play a Shrouded Shepherd, attack with Ash as a 5-5. That's an option, but then I don't have the option to Cleave Shadows, and they're black-red, so Cleave Shadows is actually a pretty premium card to lose access to. So Yeah, being able to cleave shadows later could be pretty sick, so I don't think we want to make a treasure off of that's mine. So, Hopeful Vigil's fine. Hopeful Vigil attack, trade up into a 2/3 is fine, then I can return Triumphant Ash anyway. Not exciting, but it's fine. It's not like Ash is going to attack better on a later turn. As just a 2/2 here. Right, like unless I'm casting Shrouded Shepherd itself, Ash will not be attacking better. We've got a Witch's Mark to use with the Ash, but I have to Witch's Mark and trigger Celebration to attack with a 4/4, and even a 4/4. Even if Ash was a 4/4 here, Ash would be trading 1/1 for a 2/3. And we just get the damage in. All right, let's go. So opponent must have some cards that are going to push in extra damage with a wide board state. Some cards like maybe Song of Totentans to finish us off, make 1,000,000 rats and attack for 1,000,000. But also maybe just some common like the +2/+0 to each creature. So we need to keep that in mind. Our opponent is thinking that they're in a good enough position to outrace us, that their creatures are just valuable to keep as attackers. Or they just thought we had like a Torch the Tower or Monstrous Rage, but that's not super likely that they're playing around one of those. Because Arena did not stop at all, so they could get a little cheaty face about it. Alright, so Draconic Debut to kill our 2/2. Now another spell to kill the Ash? No, they just wanted to have the mana up to play Dragon Mantle in the same turn. Alright, that's fair. So, we can trigger Celebration with Spear Guard and Witch's Mark. Attack for 6 here. Then I still have the treasure from the Grabby Giants to cleave shadows later if I need to. I am already dangerously close to dying to +2/+0 to all creatures, so there is that to keep in mind. And yeah, with the fire breathing on Lord Skitter's Butcher, maybe it's even best to do some weird little dirtily defensive hybrid play and just go like Spear Guard, Treasure, and just be like, alright, I'm good. I'm just gonna poke with just Ash. Now I could also just use the treasure immediately and cleave their rat token to slow them down a tiny bit, and then I can play Shepherd next turn and feel perfectly happy with it. Could also Witch's Mark to return Triumphant away to draw 2. Then I have a 2/2 blocker that can trade into Tattered Ratter. I think that's also fine. But Return Triumphant is nice on Ash. Yeah, no. Our opponent's probably just going to make like 2 1 toughness creatures next turn because I did this, but I think let's probably just get mana efficient and plan to slam down Shepherd next turn. Alright, no, they just played a 4/4 haste, so that's fine. That works perfectly well. Cool. Our play did work out. Let's go. Ooh, hey, Godric. Don't have the mana to play Godric and another card to trigger Celebration. Oh, you know what I do, because I can discard Godric to the Witch's Mark and then return Triumphant to Godric. Is that just lethal? 4, 9, 10. 10 is not 13. Do 11, because Witch's Mark would also trigger. If I Shepherd, I deal If I do like Shepherd and Return Triumph and a Spear Guard, that's 2 damage from a Young Hero Spear Guard. It's 2, 3, 4, 9, 10. 10 damage either way. I guess since it's 10 damage either way, I'd rather do the play that is... Oh, never mind. Oh, never mind. I don't have double white. God dang it. I was going to say I'd rather do the play that hits for 10 and leaves a blocker up, but it doesn't because I don't have the mana to play the Triumphant and the Shepherd. So then I just hold the Spear Guard back to keep a blocker up awkwardly. Oh, that's so bad. I didn't have double white there. That is a big misplay. Yeah, they have 8 damage on board. We have to hold up a blocker. Shoot. Okay. I don't know... What would the best line there be then? Would it still be Witch's Mark Godric? If I Witch's Mark Godric, what am I holding as a blocker? Just Ash? Because I would still only have Ash and another blocker. And I would want to attack with one of them. Alright, do they have the lethal? Do they have Torch plus 2/0 to everybody? Or do they have Fire Breathing Lethal? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep, they've got Fire Breathing Lethal. Okay. So I don't think we had a way to play 2 creatures there. So is the line to just not attack at all? Maybe. Maybe. Obviously not seeing that I didn't have double white was a big punt there, but there's certainly a big argument for just going Witch's Mark, Triumphant the Godric, in which case I would have Ash up as a blocker or Godric up as a blocker. If we did that, we would have survived, because Torch the Tower wouldn't be able to kill Ash. So yeah, if I saw that I didn't have double white, we would have won. There's even an argument there, because they had lethal off of Dragon Mantle, for maybe holding up 2 blockers. But yeah, because we would be dead to just a 1-for-1 removal spell, like destroy a creature, put a Wicked Roll on the board. Alright, gotta just pay a little more attention to our lands there. That's definitely a bummer. So yeah, we would have hit them with Godric and a Rat. They couldn't kill the Ash. Ash would have to block the Fire Breather probably in trade. We take 6, survive with 5 life. Goes back to our turn with them at... See, instead of taking 6, they would have taken 4. So they'd be at 9. We have to find a way to deal 9. I mean, I guess since we would be drawing cards off of Witch's Mark, we would probably find a way to do that. Plus, we could have used Witch's Mark to put a Wicked Roll on Godric instead of... Oh wait, no, the Wicked Roll would be on Ash or the Rat. So we put the Wicked Roll on the Rat, because Ash is already a plenty big blocker. And we would have hit for 5 instead of 6, so they'd be at 8. And then I have a Godric and a 2/2 Rats. And they're at 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 damage on board. 6, 7 from Shepherd. Yeah, we could have definitely found lethal. Dang. Alright. That was definitely the line. Witch's Mark, Godric back. But 1-1 it'll be. Here we are for game 3 on the draw again. Opponent takes a mulligan. Beautiful for us. They start off with a sleight of hand, turn 1 to set up their draws. Ooh, we found a Godric. We'll have to wait till we get the treasure for that right now, but maybe we'll draw into a mountain. Playing against blue-green here, we do draw into a mountain. Alright, they are... I wouldn't say likely, but it's possible they have the Spell Stutter here for the Ash. Alright, blue-green Spell Stutter gets us again. But we have no way to play around that. We're not going to Witch's Mark turn 2 with this board state. Goose Mother as a 3/3. Disgusting card. Even just as a 3/3, the card is busted. 3 mana, 3/3 flyer, and a food token, and you can draw a card when you attack with it, sacking the food if you want. Might have to just coop it up, which is pretty annoying. Yeah, Goose Mother is just a Goose Mother. We're going to have to deal with it. Strong card is strong. Now they have all the mana in the world up for counter spells for Godric here, so we just grab the Giant. Just get a little grabby. You got instant speed enchantment removal? No. They could have enchantment removal here, that'd be pretty annoying. But I don't think in an aggressive deck like this I can just sit here and hold up cooped up mana instead for the turn. But if they do find like the Stormkeld Vanguard that destroys an enchantment and gets to play as a 6/7 later, that would just be real bad if they find that. Oh, I shouldn't be targeting just in case. But it works out. They don't have the cheap interaction for the Spear Guard, so targeting to get the Wicked Roll works fine. I guess there's an opportunity where it's arguable that even with open mana from your opponent, you should be targeting something with the Wicked Roll. So that's the big flaw of Witch's Mark. If you decide to put a Wicked Roll on the board, then this is now a spell with one legal target, and the legal target is the creature you control. So if your opponent has an instant speed way to put that creature back in your hand, or destroy that creature, or anything like that, they can kill your creature and stop you from drawing your cards, which is really, really gross. So that's the one big flaw of the Wicked Mark that's important to keep in mind. Alright, they have 1 blue mana right now. Let's just exile the Goose Mother. Get that mana investment out of here. The top deck war is here. Ooh, a celebration trigger. They've got a food tokens that are basically 11. Hitting for 6. They go down to 2, but basically 5. And they are eating the food, so now they are just straight up at 5 life. There's an Obira, which is not a particularly good blocker on this board. Fell Horseman just as a 3/3. That actually is a solid blocker. But there's the cooped up. Coop it up and go. All they can do is trump Belligerent and go to 1. That is game. We are now 2-1 heading into round number 4. Alright, here we are, round 4 on the draw against turn 1 Utopia Sprawl. No faster way in the whole format to make me jealous. Turn 1 Utopia Sprawl on the play. 3 mana turn 2 while your opponent has 1 land on board. Luckily they just have a Grand Ballgast for now, which does not do a lot. I guess it stops Ash from hitting them this turn, but it doesn't like hit me for a million. Oh lord, there's no way we're going to be able to hit them like at all this game. Because they're going to have 4 mana next turn. They're going to be playing 4 mana blockers when I can try to attack with a 3/3 Ash off of Redcap Thief. Alright, well. Just get 3 damage off Gingerbrute while I can, or do I just pray for good Ash attack. Probably find a bigger attack off of Shrouded Shepherd later. Let's just play the Ash and pass. Opponent now has 4 mana on board. But all they played is a 2/3, so the Ash attack actually does look quite legit, especially with our top deck Monstrous Rage here. So if they don't double block, we just really get them. And they choose not to block at all, which we're also pretty okay with. There's Sir Armont the Redeemer. That definitely explains the no block, because now they're going to have a massive lifelinker in the sky, which is filthy. Alright, I can Monstrous Rage away their Grand Ballgast on the defensive, but I think I would still like to have it on attacks here, so I just go to 12. This Twin Veil Guide is an issue and a half, but I have none of my cooped ups, so if they keep triggering Celebration, that's GG. Not much we can say and do about it. Alright, Shepherd does not do anything right now, so let's just... I guess I have to flick a coin and play a Shepherd to trigger Celebration. Pre-attacks, because I want to trigger it pre-attacks to get the +1/+1 counter. So flick a coin, see what we draw. Okay. I guess technically if I flicked a coin at Sir Armont, I wouldn't have to have this Monstrous Rage to kill Sir Armont when they try to block. But I have the Monstrous Rage, so we're good. Or I guess, yeah, Ash Tax is a 4/4, so either way, we're good there. Alright. Looks like we're just gonna get outraced by a Twin Veil Guide because we have no interaction. But that is just one of those games. It's a thing that can happen. If your opponent makes a 5/5 lifelinking flyer, you're just not gonna race it without removal, so... Let's see. Doesn't look like Celebration, because that's not a non-land permanent at all. But there's Genealogist. Alright. I guess... we... Well, not yet. But we just can't beat a 5/5 lifelinker. That's just insane. Whoa. This is a big attack from our opponent. Okay, so Monstrous Rage is +3/+1 trample. No reason to use it on the aggressive because they're going to be at 5,000 life here. But I can just barely not die, right? I can go to 2. That only gives me 1 more attack, though. Gives me 1 more turn. I could crack the treasure to Monstrous Rage and kill Sir Armont to make the Twin Veil Guide and the Grand Ballgast smaller for when they attack again. But if I do that, I don't have it for when I attack them, and I'll still be at 2 life against a 3-power flyer anyway. So I guess I might as well keep it for when I attack them. Alright. Yeah, 17 life. Cool. Viper is one of the better draws in the deck here. We certainly can't lethal them. I could Viper their Genealogist, play the Viper, Monstrous Rage pre-combat, and then I trigger Celebration, so I hit for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But that is nowhere near 17, so we have to Viper the Twin Veil Guide. So it doesn't have the flying anymore. Alright, and I guess that was a good enough draw that actually using Monstrous Rage to trade into Armont would have helped. Yeah, because now I don't have enough blockers to survive anyway. On board, they attack all and kill me. But realistically speaking, if we replay this game except I Monstrous Raged and killed Armont, then this turn they don't attack us, they just play a Twin Veil Guide and I have one turn to draw Cooped Up, which is still like a 90% to lose game. So, I wouldn't call this one a punt because I top decked the Viper. I think it was probably fine to try to hold on to the Rage and see if we can find a way to kill them as being something more likely than finding a way to grind it out and turn it around. I think that is genuinely far more likely in most positions. Our first loss was definitely a punt, but that one we were just losing. Here we are for game 5 on the play. We did it. This hand is one of our slowest hands though, so not really taking advantage of being on the play here. I think our first loss, if we were on the play in our first loss, we would have won, but we could have won on the draw and we punted it away. Second loss, we were probably losing no matter what. The only way we win that is if we just draw Cooped Up, and we were not drawing removal that round. Not a lot of decks can beat the 10 life point swing every turn of facing a 5/5 lifelinker. Ooh, that's a draw. Oh my god, yeah, that gives me a creature to cast this turn. And a Virtue to play turn 5. So we're just going to get a 2/2 Knight, then we're going to play a Grabby Giant, then we're going to play a Virtue of Loyalty, excuse me. I forgot I had either of these in my deck, because I didn't draw either of them. Until now. Expel would have been nuts in our second loss, actually. Although I guess our Ash had gotten pretty big at that point, but still, just wiping the whole board would have been good. Even if it killed all our creatures. Alright, get our little Knight token, sick. Jam in for 4. Drop a Grabby Giant. I guess there's an argument to play Hopeful Vigil, and that's mine, just to guarantee I have 5 mana for Virtue of Loyalty. But Virtue's better the more creatures we have on board anyway, so... getting a 3rd creature out feels pretty good. I guess we'd have 3 even with the Vigil. Yeah, you know what? Getting the Treasure and the Hopeful Vigil is probably better. This way means we have a bigger creature if we hit the 5th land, though. And even if we don't, we can just play Vigil and Cooped Up that turn. Which is still a great turn of Magic. Yeah, this is still going to be a great turn. Now I could Shepherd and Coop Up instead. That better? No, I think Vigil Cooped Up is still the play. No chump with the rabbit. Not expecting that. There's the Steady Tortoise. They have 1 blocker against 5, or sorry, they have 2 blockers against 5 attackers, so 3 creatures get in. Block Ash, block Grabby Giant, take 6. Yeah, they're dead. They're already dead. We'll just make it super dead, I guess, to play it safe. Yeah, this is definitely at least 6 damage. All right, we are now 3-2, I believe. So a 50-50 win rate no matter what, but I think the deck's pretty sweet, so hopefully we can win a couple more games, get it up into a nice positive win rate, maybe even break even. We'll see, heading into round number 6. Here we are for round 6 on the draw, but if we ever want to be on the draw, it's probably when we have an Expel the Interlopers in our hand. That'll make the Expel even more powerful. Just gives our opponent more time to dump all their creatures out before we cast it. Even if we want to just slam it down turn 5. It's a green-white deck, though, so I'm not so sure it's gonna be cast super early here, because they're not gonna, like, flood the board super quick. But that does mean it might be even better in this matchup, because we could do it kind of one-sided, right? Because I've got a hand of 1 and 2 power creatures, so if we kill everything with power 3 and greater, Expel could be wild. But there's a 2 power creature, so our Viper will die when we Expel, but that really holds off our attacks too. That's not good for us. And we are hitting way too many lands, so we are certainly looking for anything non-land off the top. So Witch's Mark to buff the Pie Wielder up. Wish I had a Torch the Tower here. I would super sack a Gingerbrute to counter that. But we didn't find any Torch the Towers in the draft pod, so not gonna happen. That does make it strong enough that Expel the Interlopers will be one-sided again, which is pretty sweet. And Scalding Viper's getting some damage in here. So that's awesome as well. Another mountain. Maybe they are heavier in red than I thought. Maybe red, green, splash, white rather than the other way around. The Shrouded Shepherd does not actually help any of these creatures attack, because even if I make Viper a 4/3, it just dies to first strike, so we just use it for Gingerbrute damage instead. Part of what's generally pretty strong about the Shepherd's Enter the Battlefield effect is it can find an attack where you wouldn't have one otherwise, but the stats just line up poorly for that here. If the Viper was a 2/2, it would work. Then I attack with a 4/4 and we find an extra 2 damage that we wouldn't have found, right? Instead of hitting for 1 with Gingerbrute, 2 with Shepherd, we would hit for 1 with Gingerbrute, 2 with Shepherd, and 2 with Viper. But does not have the toughness to do that. I'm at 20 life here. How shook should I be? It's probably overly defensive, but I'm just going to put a Spear Guard in its way, since it replaces itself. They have their own Expel? Oh my god, they do. Alright, well, that is really bad for me. Just wipe the whole board. There's land 8 for us. Or sorry, land 7. Feels like land 8 in an aggro deck. Dane's Recruiter post-board wipe is pretty strong. Glad we have our own board wipe. There's land 8, so we have literally 50% of our lands less than halfway through the deck. So, if we are average luck, these next 7 cards are non-lands now, because we already have half the lands. And there's 7 more cards till we're halfway through the deck. That's how stats work, right? That's how RNG works. Time for 7 non-lands in a row. Just Recruiter. No other 3-mana or less creature here, which is not a good time for us, because at 10 life I have to just pop the Expel now. I can't afford to wait. Princess takes flight. Please don't tell me they found like 15 stockpiling celebrants in their draft pod. Have I played a Witch's Mark? I have not, so I'm going to keep this land in my hand for if I draw that. I'm going to wait to flick a coin till their end step. Oh, Lord Almighty. We are already like 4 cards behind, and now a stockpiling celebrant is going to dig an even bigger hole. Draw an additional removal spell, scry 2, basically. Draw a second Princess Takes Flight and scry 2. Alright, they did not drop a 1 toughness card, so flick to the face. Land 9 and 10 have arrived. There's the Slayer, Fear, Card Drench, and Bomb Rare that we have not seen once. It is in our deck. But we will see it from our opponents only. This draft, sadly. And get crushed by it. Because they can just recast the Princess Takes Flight and kill us here. So I guess on the plus side, their Slayer of Fear doesn't even get to do anything. Just, any 4-power creature would have killed us there, basically. So 3 and 3 it will be, unfortunately. Would have liked to see this deck do better. I think on average this deck probably does do better than that. It is quite explosive. It's got a great curve. It's not really lacking on removal. Maybe a little bit low with just the double cooped up for killing big cards, but it's kind of like double cooped up and expel to kill big cards. And the flick a coin for small stuff. So I think there's nothing it's really lacking. It's got removal. It's got a great creature curve. It's got excellent bombs. Things just did not line up quite perfectly for us in a couple of those games. 2 real ways to look at it here, and the least productive way to look at it would be to look at our second 2 losses and be like, okay, well, I mean, we couldn't do anything there. The Utopia sprawled into a 5/5 lifelinker, and we didn't draw removal for the 5/5 lifelinker. You're never going to race that. So we're just going to lose that game every time. And then game 3, we just got board wiped and then flooded out. You're never going to win that game anytime either. The more productive way to look at it is to look back at things that we could have changed. I don't think that there was anything that we could have changed deck building, drafting, gameplay-wise to win the second and third game, but the big pivotal one here was that first game. The big punt just not seeing that I didn't have double white there. If I did go for the play, like we said after the draft, or after that game, of discarding Godric and return Triumphant Godric and attacking with that, Ash was a big enough creature that Ash wouldn't have died to torch the tower, so we would have lived another turn and then found lethal on them there. And had we won that game, we would have been 4 and 2 right now, which already feels way better than 3-3. Even just being 4-3 in the end, if we would have lost whatever we paired up against after this, we would have at least been breaking even. So we certainly could have had a very solid record with this deck. At worst, if I played it out perfectly here, we would have been 4 and 2 right now, and who knows what we would have gotten paired up against next. We could have maybe even won a couple more matchups with the right pairings there. So that's the big thing that we could have turned around. I just wasn't paying enough attention. So kind of a sad way to end it, because it's one of the more disappointing kind of punts, because it's not a kind that's like based on some kind of gameplay decision making that can like be learned from and changed in the future. It's literally just like pay attention to your lands kind of thing, which is like something that you're always consciously trying to do all the time anyway. Sometimes you just make a little blunder like that, make a little punt like that. It just happens. It's not like I'm thinking over my lines the wrong way or anything. I just did not see, did not notice, did not pay enough attention to that mana base. So I could tell myself to pay more attention to my mana base in the future, but I already try to do that, so it doesn't even feel like a big mistake we can learn too much from. Unfortunately, one of the more disappointing ways to lose the game, but I will still try to pay more attention to my mana bases. The one other thing that we could have done, I don't think it affects any of these games really at all, but just would be interesting in the future because I did notice after playing a lot of those games, we didn't have a lot of rolls for the Ginger Brute. We had the one young hero roll, we had the Wicked roll or the Monster roll maybe to buff it up, get maybe like 2 damage a turn off of the unblock ability. But I think without a lot of young hero rolls, the Ginger Brute does fall behind a little. So we probably should have been like dropping Ginger Brute, playing a Pie Wielder or a Grabby Giant, something else like that. Something a little higher on the curve. I don't think Ginger Brute was super duper impressive for this build. But again, that wouldn't have changed any of the games really at all if Ginger Brute was a 4-3 or a 2-3 instead to play later in the game. I just think it would have been better overall. But yeah, still pretty happy with how I drafted. I think we ended up with a great deck, just a pretty disappointing gameplay. Punt is going to knock us down to 3-3 for today's draft. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below, and if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.